Bottom half, there's Everton in 19th. 2 points from safety and level on points with bottom of the table Southampton. West Ham moved back above the drop zone this weekend by beating Everton, while Bournemouth dropped into the bottom 3 on goal difference. The only good news, just 3 points separate 14th place and 20th place. So just one win could really change things, but those wins have been really tough to come by for Everton. They're winless in their last 8 Premier League matches dating back to October, including 6 losses in their last 7. And they're coming off a couple of defeats to teams that entered the match in the relegation zone, Southampton and West Ham. And welcome to Premier League Live. Thanks for being with us. Paul Burmeister alongside Danny Higginbotham. So reportedly, Everton have sacked their manager, Frank Lampard. And we're getting used to these kind of conversations. But as for this one specifically, if it does come to fruition and the club has sacked the manager, do you think it's more of a reflection of Lampard and what he has done or hasn't done, or of the disarray this club is in right now?
I think it is more so the disarray of the club. I go back to 2002 when David Moyes took the Everton job, and one of the most successful Everton manager in recent times. And he said that Everton is the people's club. Well, now the people's club no longer belongs to the people. And that is a measure of the mismanagement over recent years. Hiring and firing has been incredible. Managers' tenure, if it's 2 years, they're considered to have been at the club for a long time. And I look at Frank Lampard, yes, OK, we know results are always going to create the dilemma of what happens with a manager. And it's not been good enough recently. But this is all coming to a head now from years of changing of managers, changing of players. You know, I was looking at it earlier on, and players from 5 different managers started Frank Lampard's last game at West Ham when they got beat. And there's no continuity, there's no consistency. There's a split between the club and the fans. And it's just a really, really sad state of affairs. And from the fans' perspective, when you listen to what the fans have got to say, they all backed Frank Lampard. The anger wasn't towards Frank Lampard because he took the club into his heart. He tried everything that he could. Results weren't good enough. I'm sure if he was asked a question, he would say exactly the same thing. But it's the lack of leadership and it's the lack of direction that just leads Everton to fall further and further away from where they want to be season per season. The club clearly has gotten used to pointing the finger at the manager. 7th manager. This would be the 7th manager change in 7 years. So while they look to the manager and say this has been the problem, what is, I know you mentioned leadership at the top, more specifically, what is the bigger problem that has run through this organization while they continue to cycle through managers? There's no thinking of managerial appointments. You know, I looked at it not long ago and I saw the top 2 favourites at the time were Marcelo Bielsa and Sean Dyche. 2 contrasting styles of managers, and you're going to end up with one of those managers, potentially from the things that you read. And when a manager comes into the club, it's as though they want that instant fix, the powers that be. They want the instant fix. So they give them some money, they spend the money, then when it doesn't work, they get rid of the manager and they bring another manager in. Well, then a manager wants to bring his own players in, wants to get rid of players that are no good for him. And you end up with a group of players, all signed by different managers, all different cliques within a dressing room, because I've had that myself when I've been at football clubs. You know, you'll be signed by a manager and you're delighted. That manager goes, another manager comes in, it's like, I don't know whether he likes me. And that's happened 4, 5, 6 times down the road. So at some point, the managers do get the blame, and I get that, but at some point, the common denominator is the hiring and firing of these managers in such a short space of time. Let's go ahead and welcome in our Premier League insider, David Ornstein. And David, thanks for joining us. Multiple reports, including yours, have Everton sacking Frank Lampard, yet the organization, the club, hasn't confirmed this yet. What's happening there?
Well, I'm afraid, Paul, it probably points towards a bit of disorganisation within Everton, and that's one of many issues that the club is suffering from at the moment, because I think the news emerging via a number of reputable media outlets, including myself, caught people at the club by surprise. I don't think it had been communicated internally, the decision of Farhad Moshiri, the Everton owner, down to others at the club. Of course, they would need to go through a number of processes, informing Frank Lampard, settling compensation. At the same time, they're trying to set about interviewing, discussing, holding talks with candidates for the new position as Lampard's successor. And therefore, the news has not been officially confirmed yet, but Lampard is out of the job at Everton, and they need to do something pretty quickly to try and sort this out, because they're one of the few teams that have been in the Premier League since its formation in 1992. They're in a perilous position as things stand. They've now changed managers on 6 occasions in 5 years under the owner, Farhad Moshiri. And he, despite the fact that there is a board of directors and there are other influential figures at the club, is the person in control of this. He has the power, and it's at his feet that the responsibility for this decision lies.
We were sitting here almost a year from right now. It's amazing how it's been almost exactly a year. And I brought up at that point, when they got rid of Rafa Benitez, a couple of things. And I can ask you those same questions right now. Who are the leading candidates to be the manager this time? And is there any way to see this as an attractive job?
I remember that conversation we had, and it was a pretty brave decision for Frank Lampard to step into the breach, because Everton are a bit of a mess, and they were when he arrived. They were in a relegation struggle, and they've had huge problems on the pitch, but also off of it too, financially. A lot of people coming and going behind the scenes, as well as players, the building of their new stadium. And now it's about who is going to take over from him, as you say. Farhad Moshiri himself is speaking to a number of candidates and has held talks with options, including Marcelo Bielsa, who, of course, is out of work following his departure from Leeds, which is coming up to the best part of a year itself. And that presents a really interesting possibility. Of course, he's a vastly experienced manager, and he has a track record in the game that speaks for itself. Leeds were in relegation trouble under him. They decided to change to Jesse Marsch, and he got them out of it. And now, as I understand it, Farhad Moshiri would like to appoint Marcelo Bielsa. That is what he wants to do. However, what we don't know is whether that feeling is replicated across the hierarchy at Everton, and whether the other influential figures feel the same. The appointment of Lampard was a collective decision. So although Farhad Moshiri has taken many of these big calls unilaterally, in particular over transfers and the appointment and sacking of managers in the past, Lampard's arrival was a collective decision. Will the appointment of the new manager or interim manager be collective? On top of Bielsa, I'm hearing some suggestions that Duncan Ferguson is in the thinking as well. Sean Dyche has been mentioned in various dispatches, also denied in some quarters of the media, despite being the favourite with some bookmakers to take over. But beyond that, the pool is relatively limited. One, because there is a lack of readily available candidates of the required quality. Two, because of the financial situation at Everton, which has been pretty well documented now. They've got financial fair play issues. Just to recruit new players in the transfer market, let alone sack a manager and presumably his staff and appoint a new one. Now, there is the possibility of using some internal staff, such as Leighton Baines, an Everton legend in his own right, but they will want somebody with, 18 matches to go, who can come in and galvanise Goodison Park, the players, the squad, the staff, the fan base, and unite a pretty divided and fractious club, especially at the top. This is a really dark moment for Everton, but there is still time for the season to be salvaged. We know things can change quickly in football. There are points to be played for, and there is a lot of talent at the club. Also, they are looking to recruit players as we speak. And so if they get this managerial appointment right, it could yet have the desired effect, especially with 2 weeks until Everton next play a match against the leaders. It doesn't get any easier, and that's Arsenal.
All right, our Premier League insider, David Ornstein. David, thank you very much. Let's keep it right there with potential candidates. Sean Dyche mentioned, Marcelo Bielsa mentioned. Comments or thoughts on those two guys or anybody else that you want to bring in here?
I think with Marcelo Bielsa, we know what he did at Leeds United. He got them promoted, then stabilised them in the Premier League. If this was the summer, and then you're talking, then, yeah, potentially you would look at Bielsa. But how he would get on with the powers that be and how they do things is another question. I don't think he is the man for the job in January, where he doesn't have hardly any time to try and fix things, to try and get the players on board with what he wants, because as things go tactically, it takes a little bit of time for players to adjust to him. And one of the things I would say at Leeds United, unbelievably exciting to watch, but conceded a lot of goals. And that's what Everton are trying to stop now. Because with Frank Lampard, he came into the start of this season, he was very pragmatic. His signings were pragmatic. And therefore, as the season's gone on, they're not scoring enough goals. He's been more expansive. So the signings that he made in the summer, all of a sudden now don't necessarily make sense. So your next stop is then you look at someone like Sean Dyche. Is Sean Dyche the man who can say, right, let's stop the rot, let's keep them in the Premier League and let's revisit it again in the Premier League? And you would probably say that out of the two, if they are the two main ones, then Sean Dyche would probably be a safer bet with the opportunity of staying in the Premier League.
Here's what we know right now. Everton sitting in 19th place, a club that has never been relegated from the Premier League, in the drop zone right now. And we'll see where it goes. Reportedly, they have sacked manager Frank Lampard.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. For even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you over there.